In 2008, politics in America changed forever.
Are you prepared to take the oath, Senator?
I am. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
Barack Obama became the 44th President of the United States. His story is unlike any other in America's history. A black man, the son of a Muslim, in the Oval Office.
So help you God?
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
I want to understand what Barack Obama's faith means to a country deeply divided by religious issues, and how he used this faith to take on the Christian conservatives and win.
And Mr. Obama is the most radically pro-choice candidate to ever be nominated for president.
How this outsider from Hawaii forged a relationship with the black church and used its radical teachings to sweep him into power.
America needs to clean up its own act because his hands are dripping in blood as well.
How he found God through an evangelical preacher that nearly cost him the presidency.
Goddamn America that's in the Bible for killing innocent people.
The fight for the White House may have been won, but the battle for America's soul goes on. I'm Robert Beckford. As a theologian, I've followed Barack Obama's religious progress closely. He's a Christian president with a profound faith, but not a Bible basher. A liberal who's also reached out to conservative America. I'm on a journey to find out what the faith of Barack Obama means for the politics of this fractured nation.
Your own personal Jesus. Someone to hear your prayer.
Most Americans, for most of our history, have believed that God has a special interest in the United States.
There was a religious right that sort of took over the dialogue for a few decades, and their defining issues were two: abortion and gay marriage, and that was it.
For 3 decades, the Republican right had seen themselves as the anointed guardians of America's morals. And the Democratic left were, by default, atheists, adulterers, and abortionists. Right-wing Christians had helped put George W. Bush in the White House.
In 2004, President Bush probably won the election based on his ability to garner nearly 80% of the white evangelical vote in the United States.
Barack Obama launched himself as a Christian and a liberal. I want to know how this radical shift took place, from right-wing conservatism to the birth of a new evangelical liberal left.
If George Bush hadn't been so bad, I don't think America would have been as determined to get something different. So it was the right time, right message, right person.
I'm the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. I have brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, uncles, and cousins of every race and every hue scattered across 3 continents. And for as long as I live, I will never forget that in no other country on earth is my story even possible. It's a story...
To understand the faith of America's first black president, you have to look into his extraordinary, diverse upbringing. As a young man, Barack soaked up a wide range of beliefs without adopting any specific religion. His father and grandfather were Muslims, but the Islamic faith was never forced upon him.
He grew up around Muslims and Jews and Hindus and Christians. He was not a Muslim.
His mother's worldview was more atheist than anything else, but she instilled in Barack a broad set of spiritual values and morals, not strict religious doctrine. At the same time, Obama was struggling with his identity as a black man of mixed parentage. This skinny kid with a funny name was raised in laid-back Hawaii and was searching for himself. It was this restlessness that would propel him on a journey of self-discovery.
Now this could only happen to a guy like me, and only happen in a town like this.
Inspired by the civil rights movement, 24-year-old Barack Obama arrived in Chicago, a young man with a deeply held sense of social injustice, but professing no religious affiliation. In the 1980s, Black Chicago was a progressive place, with icons of the civil rights movement like Jesse Jackson still preaching in the slipstream of Dr. Martin Luther King. Obama got a job working in the black community on social welfare issues.
I was growing up in Hawaii. Hawaii is not quite as tough as the South Side. I'm just telling the truth.
The South Side was home to a predominantly African-American population. Here, God was a focus for the community against the backdrop of crime and poverty. 1 in 5 Chicago residents lived below the breadline. Obama soon found his work isolating, and his lack of religion a hindrance. Obama realized that he needed the support of the most important institution in the black community, the church. Since before emancipation, the black churches in America have developed around a social gospel, a vibrant, politically engaged theology of Christianity. What kind of faith does Barack Obama have?
Well, it's sort of the kind of personal and yet social justice faith that you see in the black churches.
I am on my way.
And so I was drawn to a very powerful vision of the gospel.
Black churches were largely churches of liberation. That is, churches that were concerned about building up some sense of justice in this society so that black people would be treated like human beings just like everybody else. So we had to take care of the social issues within our community because the government did not.
In these deprived neighborhoods, the church was the only focal point where the black community could gather and tackle the issues confronting them.
And as somebody who got my start out of college working with churches who were trying to deal with the devastation of steel plants closing in the south side of Chicago, I know the power of faith-based institutions to get stuff done.
And get stuff done was exactly the task the young Obama set himself.
While I was sitting trying to figure out how can I get my church connected to the community, he was walking the streets trying to figure out how to get the community connected with the church. And I just figured it was a match made in heaven.
Obama made a big impression on the Reverend Alvin Love of the Lilydale First Baptist Church. Tell me about the first time you met Barack Obama.
My initial reaction really was, what does this guy want? Who is he? And he gave me his name, and then my second thought was, well, the name made me a little uneasy. All right. This was a man who was concerned about what was going on in the neighborhoods, who was trying to do something about it, and I just fell in love with it because that's exactly what I was trying to do.
So thinking about the fact that the current president of the United States cut his political teeth here, what does that make you feel?
This is one heck of a place to cut your teeth, I'll tell you that.
If we were coming into an area like this, you'd want to have a community meeting and simply ask the people, what is it that you want to see done in your community?
Obama, still in his early 20s, had not yet committed himself to Christianity.
Barack was a man of faith before he actually became a Christian. I saw him as a seeker, searching. And he would say to me, Rev, I'm working on it. You know, I'm a believer. I believe in God, but I don't want to join the church for the convenience of the people around me. I want to make certain that when I join the church, that it's a matter of my own personal relationship with God, and that's the only criteria.
The strand of Christianity that the future president was drawn to in the mid-80s was black liberation theology. Its architect was James Cone.
Black liberation theology came out of the 1960s. We were trying to reconcile the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King Jr., which was fighting for justice in this society, but we were also identified with Malcolm X. So black liberation theology is mainly a theology that sees God as a God of the oppressed for the purpose of liberating them from bondage.
Obama still regarded himself as an outsider in the black community and had not yet found his spiritual calling. He sought out Chicago's most revered religious and political heavyweight, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
I remember he used to come on this stage every Saturday morning and speak.
Jackson twice ran for president in the 1980s and was a key disciple of Dr. Martin Luther King. He still preaches in Chicago.
Don't give up. Don't put your brains in liquor. Don't give up. Don't exercise your brain with drugs. Don't give up. Don't turn on each other.
Associating with Jackson gave Obama a grounding in the highly politicized theology of the civil rights movement. What was the religious base to civil rights?
That racial superiority was a sin, that one need not accept being debased based upon the race, that we are children of God, not products or victims of the state. We have a moral right to be. The equal opportunity and equal protection under the law are our God-given right.
Of course, African Americans have always seen religion as a political force. We had to, because the church was the only place where we could assemble and do anything.
Martin Luther King Jr. did it well. Bible in one hand, Constitution in the other hand. And he invoked Jesus, Jeremiah, Isaiah, but he never compromised the pluralism of American life.
Understood. Our politics must be infused with religious values, but not allowing a religion to become so dominant as to exclude another.
Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop the violence. Save the children. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
But Obama's religious epiphany did not come from Jackson or anyone else in the old civil rights movement. On Chicago's South Side, a little-known preacher was mixing a strong pro-African message with liberation theology. Here, in the 1980s, Trinity United Church of Christ was led by a brilliant and fiery preacher, the Rev Jeremiah Wright. One thing that you are definitely confronted with when you come into this place is that it is black and Christian. It affirms and celebrates the best of African American spirituality, culture, and history, and merges all of that with the Judeo-Christian tradition. why this place would have been so appealing to the young Barack Obama. A place that says it's okay to be black. To be black is to be celebrated. And a place that says that Christianity isn't separate from the world, but is right at the heart of it, dealing with the politics and the cultural issues. How much of Barack Obama and his faith is Trinity United Church of Christ?
I think almost 100%. Why do I say that? Because of Jeremiah Wright and what he preached.
This is the first television interview the Reverend Wright has given about his disciple since the election. Perhaps he's better placed than anyone to understand the president's faith.
He is really a genuine human being whom I have respected for many, many years.
Like the civil rights leaders, Wright's own political faith emerged out of the racially segregated world of his youth.
Both my parents are from Virginia, and when they went home to see their parents, first of all, they packed a lunch, because we're not going to stop at any restaurant, because you couldn't stop at a restaurant, because you couldn't sit down in the restaurant, or you had to go to the colored section of the restaurant.
Reverend Wright's ministry was defined by black liberation theology. And so, the alliance between Obama and Wright exposed him to some of the most radical Christian ideas of the 20th century.
Black liberation theology believes that the gospel of Jesus Christ is a gospel for the poor, for the weak, and for the purpose of their liberation from bondage.
Some people have argued that black liberation theology, by focusing on blackness, is racist.
Black people who have been defined as beasts and as lower than human in the modern world, the only way you can fight against that is to love that which others try to despise in you. Now, just because we fight against white supremacy and do not accept white supremacist's judgment on what blackness means for us, just because we reject that does not mean that we hate white people. We're not trying to oppress anybody. We're just trying to get liberated.
There are two arms to the cross, right? One is vertical, which is your relationship with God. The other is horizontal, which is your relationship with the people of God. And that a ministry that does not address the world in which it's sitting is not a ministry, some sort of feel-good club. God has something to do with all of life, so that there's no separation between what one believes in religion and how one orders one's society in politics, that they are very much intertwined.
And it was this vision of an inclusive community-based Christianity that the future president finally gave himself to. It's in this very church that the young Barack Obama walks down the aisle, kneels at the altar, and surrenders himself to Jesus Christ. And this is all achieved through the teaching and preaching of the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright.
I think in the person of Jeremiah Wright, he began to find a black male figure with whom he could identify.
A typical Wright sermon could include everything from philosophy and radical theology to pop culture references. You can worship God, praise, sing, shout. You can also be critical of your faith. And it's this unique combination of celebration and criticism that makes it a seductive place for Barack Obama. In his words, he describes this whole process as finding a vessel for his values. The unique combination of black liberal Christianity with social empowerment was to define Obama's spiritual beliefs. Jeremiah Wright became an important political ally and spiritual mentor, and this relationship would propel Barack on the road to political power, but it would also lead to perhaps the biggest obstacle on the road to the White House, and one that would test his moral courage to its limit. In 2004, and with America enthralled by conservative George W. Bush, Obama exploded onto the political scene.
Tonight is a particular honor for me because, let's face it, my presence on this stage is pretty unlikely. My parents shared not only an improbable love, they shared an abiding faith in the possibilities of this nation. They would give me an African name, Barack, or Blessed, believing that in a tolerant America, your name is no barrier to success.
He became one of the few left of center to center liberal politicians that was not afraid to say, I have a faith. I believe in God. I believe in family. So unlike the picture that the right wing of the United States was able to give, that those that were progressive or those that were liberal were atheists and anti-God and anti-church, he gave a total different view of that.
To learn more about the religious context in which Obama's rise took place, I'm heading to Louisiana, America's Deep South.
When I die and the name to rest, gonna go to the place that's the best.
Louisiana is one of the most religiously conservative states in the Union. And considering that 88% of whites voted against Barack Obama, one of the most racially divided.
I don't think it was prejudice. The white population of Louisiana is pretty conservative. And Barack Obama was pretty liberal. It would be a maximum expression of religious freedom.
For the last 30 years, Christianity in America has been dominated by predominantly conservative white evangelicals, like the Southern Baptists.
Has a right not to hear in a public school in New York City.
Southern Baptist Church just apologized 2 years ago for slavery.
On the campus of the Southern Baptist Church Seminary, there are nearly 4,000 students of evangelical conservatism. This is the theological heartland of past President George W. Bush.
1972.
I've been invited to meet Reverend Richard Land, who sat at the right hand of political power for most of the last decade.
After I was here, I met my wife here. George W. Bush is a personal friend of mine. George W. Bush forged an extraordinary connection with Southern Baptists.
The facts about partial birth abortion are troubling and tragic.
They perceived him as one of them, and they identified with him.
What does he think of President Obama?
First of all, I'm profoundly grateful that Barack Obama gives every indication of being a devoted husband and father. That hasn't always been the case for American presidents, and I think it sets a profoundly solid and good example.
Hello, Jesus, Jesus, children, Jesus loves you.
While Obama was honing his political craft on the mean streets of Southside Chicago, Reverend Land was cutting his teeth here. Saving Sinners on Bourbon Street, America's Sodom and Gomorrah. I was out last night just having a meal, and I saw things and heard conversations that I've only previously seen on television.
I was pastor of the church in the French Quarter.
Oh, okay.
1 block off of Bourbon Street.
Oh, okay. And how did you find that?
Yeah, it was very New Testament. Homosexual prostitutes, heterosexual prostitutes. Well, we had drug dealers. We had everything.
My question is, does God love all of God's children? Or just the heterosexual ones?
This is a form of Christianity with a narrow interpretation of the Bible, preoccupied with sin and salvation.
They take the buzz topics like affirmative action or Roe Wade or abortion or the women's movement, no bras. No. What's upsetting them is that the way things have been in this country are no longer like they used to be.
For Senator Obama to reach out across America, he would have to navigate some tricky moral and ethical issues. But how, without alienating the South and its all-important power base? A year into Bush's second term, a cataclysmic event shook Christian America's faith in its political leaders. Ironically, it came from the heavens.
When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, the almost biblical scenes of racialized poverty being played out on the nation's television screens came to symbolize the poverty of the political right and galvanized a new religious evangelical left to which Barack Obama could appeal.
The tragedy exposed the government's religious politics for being out of touch with the underclass of America.
It's almost like the old leaders of the religious right are standing in this river and they're up to their chins and the water is rushing by and their hands are up saying, no, there's only two moral issues, stop. And a whole river, a new generation's rushing past them to embrace a much larger, wider, and deeper agenda.
Norris Henderson is a local resident and organizer here, doing the same kind of community activism as Obama did in Chicago. He invited me to see the most devastated areas of New Orleans for myself.
You can see this monument right here is a symbol of how deep the water was in different areas of the Ninth Ward. And so you can see the water was really, really high. Houses were here. Everywhere you see all this overgrown grass, houses were here. This is where a lot of the black homeowners were at, right here in the lower Ninth Ward.
The folks who got left behind in New Orleans had already been left out of the country. The people who were on the rooftops were not the wealthy and the upper middle class. They were those who had no place else to go.
310,000 African Americans were directly impacted by the storm, and over 1,000 people died.
For 5 days they watched on their television as their government failed to get the job done. And I think that significantly hurt President Bush's credibility and hurt the credibility of the Republicans in both the Congress and the White House.
Buoyed by a government that seemed impotent in the face of a national disaster, Obama and the Democrat Party stepped up a gear. It was time for Barack Obama to boldly lay out his faith in public by agreeing to be interviewed by Pastor Rick Warren, an influential religious figure from the right.
So let's get started, and will you welcome Senator Barack Obama?
It was a tremendous gamble, a moment that would either alienate Middle America or convert them to his unique brand of social gospel.
The mission was to neutralize the massive advantage that the white evangelicals had given George W. Bush in 2004.
What does it mean to you to trust in Christ, and what does that mean on a daily basis? I mean, what does that really look like?
Well, as a starting point, it means I believe in that Jesus Christ died for my sins and that I am redeemed through him.
So far, so good. But waiting for him would be the religious right's biggest single issue.
I don't know how you can have a more mega ethical issue in a society than what is a human being, and when does a human being become a human being, and under what circumstances can a human being's life be terminated.
How Obama navigated this moral minefield could determine his political future.
At what point does a baby get human rights, in your view?
Well, I think that whether you're looking at it from a theological perspective or a scientific perspective, answering that question with specificity, is above my pay grade.
He's very clever. It's an issue that nobody wants to navigate. It's the sailing around the horn. I guess that's a very dangerous place to sail. It's the horn of American politics. Your ship will get wrecked there.
It was a skilled theological performance by Obama, who managed to avoid the pitfalls and emerge as the religious candidate for the presidency. Obama had appropriated God for the Democrats. The Republicans, on the back foot, were clearly rattled and tried to parody Obama's religious politicking, but to no avail.
It should be known that in 2008 the world will be blessed. They will call him the One.
A nation healed, a world repaired.
This parody of Obama's religious convictions backfired for the Republicans, and instead exposed the spiritual vacuum of rival John McCain's campaign.
He was uncomfortable with public displays of religion. He did not like to talk about his faith in front of audiences. He wasn't particularly Bible literate, which is extremely odd. His handlers were urging him to ratchet up the religious rhetoric, and McCain dutifully tried, and it simply did not work.
Religion would become a key factor in the 2008 presidential race. Obama knew just how to use the Bible to bash his opponents.
Every major candidate had a religious game, had a religious team, a faith and values team working for them. The Obama team, savvy as they were, and I think that they might have run one of the savviest political campaigns in recent American presidential history, understood this in 2008.
Behind the scenes, the Obama team had their own way of uniting the faithful. Up to 4,000 house parties were held in homes across the country. It was good old-fashioned community activism, honed on the streets of Chicago's South Side.
The house parties might just be the secret, devastating nuclear weapon of the 2008 election. These house parties were something else. What was a house party? Getting a local, respected religious figure to bring other co-religionists and I guess talk God and Obama and how great the two were. And I can't tell you how many Jewish folks, how many Catholic folks I know that attended an Obama house party.
People wanted to be more progressive or not with the right wing, but they didn't want to have to be an atheist. They wanted to give up their belief and their faith to do it. He embodied that.
Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy? Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay, and that eating shellfish is an abomination? Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith? Or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount, a passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application?
What President Obama is saying is that when the Bible is read in context, it reveals a range of contradictions and tensions, and that the best way to interpret it is pragmatically. Now, what makes this radical is that it suggests that the Bible is an open and living text, and open to diverse interpretations.
What Obama does is he, in a general way, references the Bible as a text with many, many great ideas, but he never wants to be so arrogant as to presume that he's understood what God has said.
Just as Senator Obama's campaign seemed to be on a roll, it was thrown into turmoil.
I like to compare the use of religious politicking to somebody walking around with a little vial of nitroglycerin. These things can explode on politicians.
Right in the middle of the run-up to the 2008 election, Barack Obama's campaign was derailed, but not by one of his political opponents, but by his old friend and pastor, the Rev Jeremiah Wright.
What they did was bought $4,000 worth of tapes to try to find out what the presidential candidate had been listening to for 20 years.
Take a look at this tape obtained by Fox News that highlights some of Wright's more controversial statements.
His campaign almost imploded as a result of his association with Jeremiah Wright.
We bombed Hiroshima, we bombed Nagasaki, and we nuked far more than the thousands in New York and the Pentagon, and we never batted an eye.
This is the person that made him a Christian. This is the person who baptized his children. This is the person who married him to his lovely wife.
They created a controversy based on this man who's going to be elected president has been sitting in this congregation and listen to what he's been listening to.
The stuff we have done overseas is now brought right back into our own front yards.
Jeremiah Wright's greatest hits that were really a caricature of Reverend Wright and things he'd said out of context.
God damn America that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than humans.
He said, God damn America. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think most Americans agree with that, and Barack Obama said he didn't agree with it.
America's chickens are coming home to roost.
Had the American public heard the unedited version, they might have responded differently.
When it came to treating the citizens of African descent fairly, America failed. She put them in chains. The government put them on slave quarters, put them on auction blocks, put them in cotton fields, put them in inferior schools, put them in substandard housing, put them in scientific experiments, put them in the lowest paying jobs, put them outside the equal protection of the law, kept them out of their racist bastions of higher education, and locked them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America.
Did you see the congregation? They're enjoying this. Of course they're enjoying this. This is how we worship. And he's telling the truth. Oh my God.
Most Americans felt that it was, at the very least, unpatriotic. I would call it blasphemous myself, but that's just a personal opinion.
The relationship was now political dynamite and a real threat to Obama's lofty aspirations. But instead of turning his back on his friend, Obama did the unthinkable and refused to walk away.
Did I know him to be an occasionally fierce critic of American domestic and foreign policy? Of course. Did I ever hear him make remarks that could be considered controversial while I sat in the church? Yes.
President Obama did a remarkable job of trying to be loyal to a friend with whom he obviously was in disagreement as long as he could.
Did I strongly disagree with many of his political views? Absolutely. Just as I'm sure many of you have heard remarks from your pastors, priests, or rabbis with which you strongly disagree.
But it was a powerful moment, and I think that speech, in some ways, saved his candidacy.
Now, some will see this as an attempt to justify or excuse comments that are simply inexcusable. I can assure you it is not. And I suppose the politically safe thing to do would be to move on from this episode and just hope that it fades into the woodwork. We can dismiss Reverend Wright as a crank or a demagogue. I can no more disown him than I can disown the black community.
Instead of a predictable political U-turn, Obama cleverly deflected attention away from religion to comment broadly on issues of racial unity. And in so doing, perhaps, delivered one of the most important speeches on race in 50 years.
The fact is that the comments that have been made and the issues that have surfaced over the last few weeks reflect the complexities of race in this country that we've never really worked through. A part of our union that we have not yet made perfect.
You had the clash of the media who had an agenda, or parts of the media that had an agenda, and Wright who refused to politicize or dilute whatever it is that he was saying. So it became a combination that was very dangerous for the president.
And then Reverend Wright threw Obama under the bus.
To quote the Bible, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever you sow, that you also shall." Jesus said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." You cannot do terrorism on other people and expect it never to come back on you. Those are biblical principles, not Jeremiah Wright bombastic, divisive principles.
Reverend Wright would not compromise his theological values for the sake of his surrogate son's campaign. His refusal to dilute his message put Obama in an untenable position. He had no choice but to sever links with his church and Wright. Those close to him say it was one of the most difficult decisions of his political career.
All my children have made mistakes, and I forgive them. I love them. He's like a son to me. He made a mistake. He's listening to the wrong people, but he's doing what he has to do to get where he has gotten. So, yeah, that's a decision he made. But I'm not mad at him, no.
Is Jeremiah Wright misunderstood?
Just because he offers a prophetic critique against the country that he loves does not mean that he is unpatriotic. That means he is the most patriotic. He was telling America that America needs to clean up his own act because his hands are dripping in blood as well.
The election race had been blown wide open. But a bigger crisis was looming on the American horizon that would dwarf the controversy over Wright and throw the Obama campaign a lifeline.
It is one of the oldest axioms of American politics that when the economy goes in the dumper, it takes up all the oxygen in the room. And that for the general populace, the party in the White House gets the blame.
The question for you today isn't, do you have a lot of money? Are the stocks up or down? My friend, the question is, do you know Jesus today?
63% of Americans, when they went into the polling booth, the economy was the reason they voted the way they voted.
We need to come together to solve a set of monumental problems, a falling economy, and a chronic healthcare crisis, problems that are neither black or white or Latino or Asian, but rather problems that confront us all.
Ronald Reagan could have come back from the dead, gone into a phone booth, and changed into a Superman outfit, and he couldn't have won this election.
President Obama won on a wave of optimism, with a mandate to put the message of the social gospel into action. For those who had fought for black liberation, it was the moment they had dreamed of.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Having won the race, Obama's challenge would now be to make good his political promises and meet the expectations of all the faiths he'd evoked.
When the first black president of the United States speaks of identity in his inaugural address, January 20th, 2009, he uses these words: America's patchwork heritage is a strength, not a weakness. We are a nation of Christians and
Muslims, Jews and Hindus, and non-believers.
So here is a president who's lifting up the religious diversity of America and saying, this can be a model of interfaith cooperation.
Barack Obama still believes there's a place in America for non-believers, just like his mother. But this nod towards secularism has left traditional evangelicals feeling very nervous and throws doubt on just how far this Christian-secular dialogue can go.
Secular has become almost a four-letter word, a taboo, in some quadrants, in many quadrants of American society.
How you respond to people who say America is blessed by God?
Well, I think they're quite seriously mistaken. I don't think there's a God to do any blessing in the first place. I mark out God, I put in freedom, and I stamp it, tax the churches.
Why'd you do that?
Protest. Protest against having a religious motto on the money. And I was hoping it was illegal. I could engage in a little civil disobedience, but my wife thinks I'm damn silly to do this. So.
But secularism pales into insignificance beside the greater threat to Obama's interfaith philosophy: America's fear and mistrust of Islam.
We watched our religion get tarred and vandalized and poisoned. And there was a message sent to billions of people around the world that Islam equals violence.
Obama is using his own Muslim heritage as a way to bridge divisions across the country and abroad.
I'm a Christian, but my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a young man, I worked in Chicago communities where many found dignity and peace in their Muslim faith. As a student of history, I also know civilization's debt to Islam.
America is structurally a multicultural society, a multi-religious society, and now a multi-ethnic society. It's part of the American fabric, if you will.
Bringing Islam into the mainstream has many opponents, including the old evangelical churches.
Look, Islam believes it is the true way. Doesn't believe Christianity is the true way, it believes it is the true way. So the beginning of respect between me and a follower of Islam would be, we disagree about which one's the one true way. You think your way is, I think my way is. We can start from there.
The events of September the 11th, 2001 cast a long shadow over America's future relationship with Islam.
Have you seen a change in the way in which America has responded to Islam post 9/11?
Oh, good God, yes, negatively. Most Americans know nothing about Islam, absolutely nothing about Islam. If you put a gun to their head, they couldn't name the 5 pillars of the faith.
In this climate of fear, Obama is uniquely placed as the son of a Muslim to extend an olive branch to the Islamic world.
Assalamu alaikum. I've come here to Cairo to seek a new beginning between the United States and Muslims around the world. One based on mutual interest and mutual respect.
Does Islam in America threaten God's interest in America, God's blessing?
I think so. Yeah, I do. As an evangelical Christian, I do not believe that Allah is the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Allah is not the God of the Bible. Jews and Christians worship the same God. Different faith, but the same God. Muslims do not worship the same God. And, you know, I know George W. Bush disagrees with me about that, but he was commander-in-chief, not theologian-in-chief.
Equality we wanna. Hey, Obama. Equality we wanna.
Barack Obama had inherited many problems left over from the Bush administration, including a war and economic recession. But 1 year on, I wanted to see how far Obama's reforms had been put into practice, and whether he had delivered on his faith-based promises.
What do you prioritize advising the president? Economic issues or the moral issues?
Economic issues are moral issues. This is about what happens to the lowest income and most vulnerable people who are in our neighborhood, our nation, and our world.
When the religious right were in power, they didn't really change the big issues, did they? They didn't stop abortion. They didn't stop same-sex marriage.
They didn't feed the hungry. They didn't give health care to the poor. Faith becomes these issues. What about the fact that we just took over people's country? Preemptive strike. 100, depending on the World Health Organization, 300, 500,000 dead Iraqis. They had nothing to do with 911. What about that? What does your faith say about that? Well, we stopped gay marriage.
So the war is a faith issue?
Yes.
Healthcare is a faith
issue. Education is a faith issue, yes. Social policies that affect the lives of God's children.
So the battle now is for equality. Well, we're free. We can go to any school. We're just not getting the same education. We can sit anywhere we want on the bus. We just can't afford the fare. We can check in any hotel. We just can't afford to check out.
Hey, Obama. Equality we wanna.
One of the most ambitious policies the president has tried to implement is healthcare reform.
And is healthcare reform part of this agenda?
Oh, it should be. That my British wife can't understand is how healthcare is a commodity in this country, that wealth gives you health, and health care is not thought of as a right.
Where did the Southern Baptists stand on healthcare reform?
Well, most Southern Baptists are opposed to the proposals by so-called Obamacare. Most of them acknowledge that we do need to reform our healthcare system, but they see the proposals that have been blessed by the Obama administration as being far too comprehensive and far too radical.
The president's vision of a pluralistic society has come face to face with the reality of Capitol Hill party politics. His approval rating has plummeted to just 50%, the second lowest of any president in their first term. Social reform is clearly not a guaranteed vote winner.
How well has President Obama performed in this first year?
I don't know of a single major problem that has been solved so far. But I think the jury's still out, and we'll see whether or not he learns from this first year and whether or not he goes on to develop more effective policies.
On the streets of Chicago, what do they think of their prodigal son's progress in the White House?
And 1 year in, what's your assessment of Barack Obama?
I have views that I'm sure Jesus don't agree with, or, same way Barack Obama does, right? I mean, you could have views that people, you don't necessarily have to agree on, but you can agree to disagree, I guess. Whether you voted for him or not, he's still our president.
I don't like Obama. I voted for him, but I don't like what he's doing.
The question now is, can the president force through his radical reforms while keeping this diverse nation behind him and bridging the many political divisions?
In education, blacks are on an average 4 grades behind whites in reading and basic math. Well, how do we close that gap? So when President Obama was elected, he and I had agreed on that. And he said we needed a bipartisan effort in that area.
I'm in Philadelphia, where Obama has united old enemies. Left-wing Al Sharpton and conservative Newt Gingrich to work together on the same education initiative.
Can you talk to him about health care? As in anything in politics, you can find strange bedfellows. Newt Gingrich agreed for his own set of reasons. I agreed for my own set of reasons. So the president said, so we don't have the contention that we had around health care. Why don't you guys come together on that and go around the country together?
Who fears Philadelphia's children's education will not improve?
Make no mistake about it, education is the civil rights issue of the 21st century.
If children don't get an adequate education, they have been cheated of their right to pursue happiness. They have been cheated of a large part of their future. Their lives will be poorer.
So it's a religious issue in terms of...
It's a moral and religious issue. It is immoral to have a certain set of teachers for certain people and better teachers for others. It's immoral.
25 years after Barack Obama first hit the streets of Chicago's South Side, the challenges to this community remain the same. The shocking murder of Darian Albert, a 16-year-old honors student, is a stark reminder that Obama's election promises are a long way from being fulfilled.
And there's still a lot of work to be done.
This is Christian Finger High School. It's the school where the young man who was beaten to death attended. But it seems like it's bringing us all the way back to where we were in 1983.
Poverty and poor education in Chicago are perpetuating crime and violence.
The students involved, and many of them were residents of Altgeld Gardens, where Barack Obama used to do a lot of the organizing.
Witnesses say the violence unfolded when Finger High students got out of school after 2:30 yesterday afternoon.
Everybody was just letting him get beat. It was basically like he was really by himself.
That was an all-out gang war that you saw with those kids in the black shirt.
Darian Albert is now a homicide victim.
The views I heard outside Darian Albert's funeral were starkly familiar. Can Obama really make the difference at grassroots level?
The solution is right here in the hood.
Right.
The solution is right on that street. The solution is right in that school. This is not rocket science.
I hear the gunshots, I hear the sirens every day until the government decides to bring the community in at the decision-making level. This will continue. I guarantee you that.
Are you hopeful that Barack Obama will do something?
We are calling on our president, and we are calling on the administration to bring some redress to the black and brown communities of America.
It's an economy based on these kids killing each other.
There may be an African American in the White House, but economic and racial divisions across America are too complex for one man to solve. On my journey to discover the truth about the president's faith, I've met people who see him as a prophet, with God on his side, and others who are deeply suspicious of his left-wing politics. The American president has been praised internationally for his audacity to hope. Now, can he live up to the hype?
These are the halls of power. It's where decisions are made. And what's clear is that this is a deeply religious administration. They cater for people of all faiths and people of no faiths. Open, comfortable, inclusive. They respect the separation between church and state, but religion and politics can mix in a positive way, in a constructive way. And I just think that is unique to this country, unique to this nation. It's a major strength. I don't think that is a weakness at all.
Barack Obama's strong religious beliefs helped him get elected. But after 1 year in office, the honeymoon is over. Obama has just lost the Democratic stronghold of Massachusetts and control of the Senate. A bitter blow that jeopardizes his healthcare reform and his faith-based political agenda.
I think Barack Obama has laid out some pretty strong visions of how he wants to see the world change. But as he would admit himself, we haven't accomplished much of that yet. He once said, after elected, he said, "I'm going to need the wind of a movement at my back to accomplish anything significant." And I wrote him a note back that very day. It said, "And maybe also out in front of you to clear the way and pull you along."
You have to look at the total picture. You don't put your faith in any president. You put your faith in your beliefs and in your worldview, and you work for your beliefs and you work for your worldview.
Do you fear for him? I hope for him. He's running against a tide of fear. Jesus had to take the risk. He was killed at a young age. Dr. King took the risk. He was killed at 39. Hope must ultimately prevail.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That is the true genius of America, a faith in simple dreams.